Okay, now the neutrophils have formed something that is called a phagolysosome. Now, how will it get rid of that intended pathogen? Now, you see, we have two ways or two pathways of killing. We have the O2 dependent pathway, and we have the O2 independent pathway. Now, we're not going to talk much about the O2 independent pathway because it is really simple. We have some enzymes. It is basically an enzymatic pathway. We have some enzymes in secondary granules, and those enzymes, such as lysozymes that are found within macrophages, for example, they basically digest the pathogen. However, what is really important in this video is that we talk about the O2 dependent killing. Now, you see, within the phagolysosome we have an enzyme that is called an NADPH oxidase. Now, what NADPH oxidase does is that it converts O2 into superoxide, okay, by the NADPH oxidase. And then the superoxide is going to be converted, as we know, into hydrogen peroxide via the superoxide dismutase enzyme. Now, the important step is that we convert this hydrogen peroxide into bleach, which is HOCl. And this, of course, happens via the myeloperoxidase enzyme. Now, what happens when we have a defect in a certain enzyme? The most important enzyme, which is NADPH oxidase, for example. Now, when we have a defect in this enzyme, we will have a disease that is called a chronic granulomatous disease. And what is a granuloma? Granuloma is basically a walled-off area or a quarantined area of a tissue in which acute inflammation actually occurs, but the body or the tissue cannot get rid of that pathogen, so it creates a granuloma. So, in chronic granulomatous disease, we have a defective NADPH oxidase, but we still have our myeloperoxidase. Now, you see, in certain bacteria, in catalase negative bacteria can secrete and provide hydrogen peroxide. So we will get our hydrogen peroxide from the catalase negative bacteria, and we have a functioning myeloperoxidase enzyme, and bleach actually can be formed and killing occurs. However, when we have catalase positive bacteria, we know that catalase actually destroys the hydrogen peroxide, and it turns it into water. And this means that in chronic granulomatous disease, we would have recurrent infections with catalase positive bacteria. Okay? Because if we have a catalase negative, then we would be able to kill it via bleach because our myeloperoxidase is working. Now, of course, I don't want to get into microbiology, but Staph aureus is a catalase positive microbe or bacteria, Aspergillus, and so on and so on. Now, how do we know, or how do we test for chronic granulomatous disease? Now, we have something that is called a nitro-blue tetrazolium test. And this nitro-blue tetrazolium is a dye that actually, when leukocytes are injected within that dye and they turn blue, this means that the NADPH oxidase is working. When they turn colorless, this means that we have a defect in the NADPH oxidase, and thus we have chronic granulomatous disease. Okay? Now, the next thing that occurs after the killing of the pathogen is the resolution. Okay? Because within 24 hours, the apoptotic machinery of the neutrophils actually starts working, and they undergo apoptosis. Now, macrophages, they play an important role when they come after the process, or after a couple of days. Okay, so the macrophages actually they come within 2 to 3 days after the start of the acute inflammatory process. Now, when macrophages actually get into the tissue, they have certain functions. Now, they could either see that the battle is finished and we only have the wounded and the dead, and so it promotes the resolution and it promotes healing. Okay, because it will secrete tissue growth factors. Okay, and it will secrete interleukin 10, which actually promotes the resolution and the healing. Now, they could also continue the process of acute inflammation by bringing in more neutrophils, because they can secrete interleukin 8, as we talked about. Or they could actually create some kind of fibrosis within the area and quarantine that area, okay, within some kind of fibrotic walls. Okay, and this is called an abscess. Okay, because it creates fibrosis via the fibrogenic growth factors. Okay, so these are just the functions regarding the acute inflammation. The macrophage functions in the chronic inflammation we will discuss in the next video, the chronic inflammation.